O monitor aqui ainda não está aparecendo. Hello, good morning. Welcome to our talk today. I'm very glad that you are joining us today. Let's see if we can have a conversation about a topic, inferiority today. I am Professor Lima from Keppe and Pacheco College, Faculdade, Keppe, Pacheco. In these talks, we are applying the science of analytical trilogy to many subjects that we hope is of your interest and it can be beneficial to all of you. This science of analytical trilogy was created by psychoanalyst Norberto Keppe, and we can apply in many areas of human endeavor. Today, we are going to talk about the feeling of inferiority, right? And I would like to share my screen with you, the feeling of inferiority, and what's behind it. So, the uncomfortable feeling of inferiority, feeling inadequacy, shyness, intimidation, it's a very uncomfortable feeling. And everybody, I could say, feels like this in a way or in another way. Some people feel inferior in a situation, inadequate in another situation, in front of this person or in front of that person. So it varies according to people. But who hasn't ever felt inadequate or shy or intimidated or inferior in a certain situation? This is not something rare. This happens to many people, right? So today, our intention is to talk to you about this and try to see if you can detect why this happens, what's behind it, why people feel like this, and how people can improve the situation so they can have a better life, right? So, sometimes people feel uncomfortable in different situations or circumstances, right? For example, some people feel uncomfortable in a party. They have friends meeting, friends getting together for a social event. They are talking, they are happy, they are discussing many things, talking about themselves, talking about issues, current issues. In other words, people usually are in an informal setting, talking, having fun, exchanging opinions, and you feel uncomfortable. You feel intimidated, you feel inferior, and then you may even isolate yourself a little bit. This is very uncomfortable. Why do people feel like this? Sometimes people feel like this with friends even. Not only before people you don't know, but even amongst friends. People isolate themselves, they are shy, they feel excluded, they feel left aside, right? Other people feel this at work, which is even more worrying to feel like this in a work situation. Sometimes in meetings, you don't feel like talking, you are afraid of participating, you are shy of conveying your ideas, your opinion. You'd like to hide yourself behind the table, behind the desk, right? So this happens for some people in this kind of situation. Sometimes people feel inferior before intelligent people. If they have to speak to someone who they believe are more intelligent, they might feel inferior before these people. Or before successful people, right? People may feel inferior. Sometimes before beautiful people. if you think the person you're talking to are more beautiful than you or more attractive, right? You might feel a little bit intimidated. Or before people with higher social position. So let's talk about this today. Why is it sometimes we feel inferior before other people or in certain situations, right? Let's try to analyze it. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? Because you lose your self-confidence, you cannot produce as much as you could, you don't give to society, to the environment, to the world, what you could and should give, so you restrict yourself, you are limited, on top of not feeling well. So this is something we have to try to solve as much as we can. Okay, so the first point I would like to share with you is that this feeling of inferior, this feeling of inferiority, has nothing to do with external elements. If I'm afraid of talking to an intelligent person, this has nothing to do with the person being intelligent. If I'm afraid when I am before people I don't know, right? It has nothing to do with my knowing or not knowing people. So the first point is this: it has nothing to do with the external elements, the external situation. It is something that happens inside of us, in our mind, something interior, right? That's the first point to consider. Now, we have to talk too about the human nature. You see people behaving in a very good way. For example, a very classical example is Mother Teresa of Calcutta, that very good, very nice lady who worked in India, and she was very good, very helpful. She helped many people. So we see in society people with good attitudes. You see people worried about other people, trying to help the others, trying to be nice, trying to be useful. So then you think, the human being really has a good nature. People are good in our essence, right? The human being is made of good elements, of goodness. But sometimes you also see atrocious attitudes by human beings. You see violence, you see corruption, you see dishonesty, you see betrayal, you see treachery. Not always does the human being act in a good way. Many times we have evil attitudes, right? So then people think, man is bad. Human nature is not good, is bad. When you see crimes and when you see all these horrible things happening. So, after all, what's your opinion? Are we good or are we bad? What's the true human nature? Do we have a good nature or we have a bad nature? Well, this is a topic that has been worrying philosophers and thinkers for centuries. Philosophers have always tried to find out what the real human nature is about, right? So we believe these answers by philosophers and thinkers and people in general can be divided in three groups. The first group is the group that believes that human nature is basically good. And a representative of this group is a philosopher from Switzerland, Swiss philosopher called Jean-Jacques Rousseau, very famous. Jean-Jacques Rousseau believed that man is born good, but society corrupts him afterwards. Many people believe this, many people see that this makes sense, because children, in fact, are innocent, are basically spontaneous, loving, receptive, right? So, and then human beings change a little, usually. They become more, they lose their innocence, their spontaneity, etc. So, to many people, Rousseau's idea that human nature is basically good makes sense, and people believe that we are really born good and are corrupted by society, right? So this is how this first group answers to this question. In this picture here on the right on your screen, you can see a person, a child, a young man on the left, and the world externally being very aggressive to him. You can see beasts roaring at him, stones being thrown at him, a man accusing him. So this picture represents society, the external world, really attacking this man who's supposedly good. This is how we can describe this first group. Man is essentially good and society corrupts him, right? But not everyone thinks the same way. There is another group that thinks exactly the opposite. And this group believes that man is essentially evil. And people come to this conclusion exactly when they perceive evil acts by man. A good representative of this group is English philosopher by name Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes is from the 16th century. And he noticed evil acts by man, and he concluded human nature is really evil. And he has a famous sentence. He said, man is a wolf to another man. And many people agrees with him when you see atrocities. And then people say, oh my God, the human being is really bad, right? So in this picture here on the right, it says the same thing in Latin. Homo homini lupus est. Man is a wolf to another man, right? And in fact, you see people being dishonest, people competing in companies, countries waging wars against one another. You see many evil attitudes, and then you think, well, maybe human nature is really evil, not like Rousseau believed, right? Well, there is a third group, and this third group says, well, but we have both. We have good acts and we have evil acts, attitudes. So man is actually made of both. We are good and we are bad in our nature, right? And this group has two basic representatives. One is our famous friend Sigmund Freud from Vienna. Freud believed that man is basically made of two instincts. The instinct of love, which he called eros, and the instinct of death, which he called thanatos. So Freud believed man is bad and good at the same time. We have thanatos and eros at the same time. And another representative of this group are Eastern philosophies. Eastern philosophies, they also believe we are made of good and bad, of light and darkness. They call it yin and yang. There's even that symbol, half dark and half white, representing human nature, good and bad at the same time. Many people have this idea. This is the popular idea. Usually people think man has two sides. This is your good side, this is your bad side, right? You are both good and evil. Well, Norberto Keppe came up with a different answer. And this is the fourth group. Keppe says that by nature we are good, but we have attitudes against our good nature. and this explains our evil attitudes. So it's true when people notice good and bad attitudes in man, except that the evil attitudes we take are not part of our nature. By nature, we have only good, beauty, and truth. But when we don't accept our true nature, when we go against it, then we can have evil attitudes. So it's true, we do have these two attitudes, but one is our nature and one is only our attitude, exactly against this nature. So phenomenologically speaking, I mean, in practice, what you see good and evil, but one is part of our nature. The other is only an artificial attitude you're having, right? So, Keppe says that we are born good, but we corrupt the goodness we have in our essence. I brought this beautiful painting here to illustrate this position. It's a painting by Italian painter by name Giovanni di Paolo de Grazia. He is from 1445, 15th century. And the name of the painting is The Creation of the World and the Expulsion from Paradise. So we see here the first human beings, Adam and Eve, leaving paradise. As the scripture says, human beings were created in paradise, meaning there was nothing wrong, there were no problems, no faults, a paradise, only good things, everything in order, everything correct, everything beautiful, everything good, paradise. So we were creating this with no problems. Problems are not natural. We are so used to problems that people think that is part of life. We say, oh, truth hurts. Life is so difficult, full of problems. We are so used to seeing problems and difficulties in life, we end up by believing this is natural, that life is like this, made of good and evil. No. Since the 2nd century in Greece, philosopher Tatian said, evil is a privation of good. St. Augustine adopted this idea, and his philosophy is basically based on this, that evil is an absence of the being of good. And in analytical trilogy, Norberto Keppe also sees this in practice, that evil is not something that was created by the creator, it's not an essential part of nature, but it's an absence of good. When you have an absence of good, this is evil. So, this is what happens in paradise. We were created in good, but the human beings, the first human beings, rejected good. Obviously, Adam and Eve is a symbol of humanity. Means we, all human beings, have this good basis, but we many times go against this good basis. Why do we do this? Because people believe that we can create a better life than the life that already exists. So I think if I am to create my life, you have a better life. The life I have received is not so good. I can make it better. So this attitude of arrogance, believing that the Creator didn't do a good job. He didn't make a good creation. The world he created could be improved, could be much better if I created it. So this arrogance makes us reject life as it is, which is good. And we try to create another life, another world, another reality. And obviously, because we are not creators, we can only combine elements that already exist in nature. For example, the invention of the airplane. The airplane is a creation of the human being, but this creation is only a combination, a new use of elements that already exist in nature. So the airplane uses air, uses all the aerodynamics laws. It's all based in what already exists. We are not able to create new elements that don't exist in nature. We cannot create. This the human being is not able to. So, in other words, we are not real creators. So when we don't accept life as it is, the world as it is, and try to create a new one, all we can create is fantasy, illusions, delusions. And so they don't exist. They are just an imagination, right? So this is what the scriptures tell us about the scriptures. Adam and Eve mean all of us, or every human being, we reject life as it is and we try to create a new one, but it's only a fantasy. We only create problems. Another thing is that in addition to this attitude of arrogance, not accepting life itself and try to create another one, Keppe calls this arrogance, he calls theomania. Theo means God, so a mania to being God, a desire, a wish to being like a God. We intend to be God. So we say, oh, what God did is not good. I'm going to make a better one. So this theomania makes us act this way, reject what's good. And also because of envy. As you know, as we have said before, envy is not to wish something good another person has and you don't have. This is not envy. This is a common idea about envy, but it's not very much correct. Envy, in fact, is when we reject what's good. So this is what happened in paradise, and it happens with human beings in general. We are in a good life, in a good nature, but because it has not been created by us, it has been created by a creator, not us. So we are envious. We say, oh no, I don't like this. Someone else made it, not me. So because of this envy, we go against what's good. And because of this theomania, we believe we can create a better life. We try to do this, but we only create problems. And then we have made an inversion. Life which is good, we consider bad. A fantasy that we have to create a new life, which is only a fantasy, is not good. We believe it's going to be good. So we created an inversion in life. That's why I brought this painting here, because I think it explains very well what happens to us, to human beings. We reject what's good and try to create a new world which is only problems. And I think this explains problems in our lives. Let's see how Dr. Keppe explains this.
O que houve de engano nas análises, nas terapias até hoje, é essa questão de achar que o indivíduo só tem uma base doentia. Eu falo que não, que a base verdadeira que ele tem é sã, que o indivíduo ele foi, vamos dizer, criado dentro de toda a bondade, de toda a verdade e de toda a beleza, vamos dizer assim. Quer dizer, o ser humano, dentro desse triângulo, né, ele foi criado dentro de todo o bem possível. Depois ele deu contra, e aí entrou na doença.
Então essa ideia, não, o ser humano é assim mesmo, a natureza humana tem o bem e o mal, não há o que fazer, nós temos que aceitar e conviver com essa atitude de maldade, de violência do homem, porque essa faz parte da sua natureza. Isso é uma conversa errada, né, Dr. Keppe?
You see, it's a perfect explanation. Good exists in our basis, but we reject it sometimes. And that explains evil in life, which hasn't been created by the Creator. Let's move on here. Dr. Keppe has a book. This is a basis of analytical trilogy. I really recommend this book for those who want to understand the basis of his thought and his work, his scientific research. This book is called Liberation. In this book, he says the following sentence: the field of therapy has always sought a fundamental explanation for the conduct of the human beings. As I said before, philosophers and thinkers, they've been trying to solve this problem for ages, for years, for centuries, right? Trying to understand the human nature. So Dr. Keppe, let's see what he says following. Dr. Keppe says, well, Freud, for example, saw the problems coming from sex. Remember, we had a talk about this. For Freud, we have this sexual energy controlling everything. So everything people do are determined by the basic sexual energy. If you do good acts, it's because of the sexual energy. If you do evil things, it's because of this sexual energy. This is according to Freud. Even arts, which are so elevated, is our contact with superior elements, with metaphysics, with the Creator even. Freud believes is only a sublimation of sexual impulses. So this is Freud. Then Keppe continues in his book Glorification. Melanie Klein, that famous disciple of Freud, she said the basis of everything is envy. People attack what's good. There is another very famous psychoanalyst. This is Swiss psychoanalyst Boss. He said that problems come because when there is a privation of consciousness, people deprive themselves from consciousness and then they cause themselves and society problems, right? This is how Boss tried to solve the problem. Viktor Frankl, from the Third School of Vienna, said the problems come from irresponsibility. I brought this painting here to illustrate Viktor Frankl's position. This is a painting by Joaquin Urrutia, Irresponsibility of Unconsciousness. You know, Viktor Frankl, he was in the concentration camp in Poland, right? And he almost died there. And in that concentration camp, he noticed that people need a meaning for life. That people who had a meaning in life, they could stand in that horrible situation, in the Holocaust, much better. So he was a good man. He helped many people there in that horrible situation. And he created a method saying that people have to have a meaning in life. Keppe says that it's true, we have to have a meaning, but the point is, we already have a meaning. There is no one with no meaning. If you think you don't have a meaning in your life, it's because you are rejecting the meaning your life already has. So it's rather a matter of perceiving that we go against the meaning of life instead of trying to create another one, right? But meaning for life is something interesting. This is how Viktor Frankl answered to this question. And then we have another disciple who we spoke a few classes ago, Alfred Adler, from the Second School of Psychoanalysis in Vienna. And Alfred Adler, now we go back to our initial point. He spoke about the feeling of inferiority. right? So I just gave you this panorama to show that how many philosophers try to answer to this question, what's human nature really about, right? Many answers. Now we come to this answer by Alfred Adler. He said that the problem is a feeling of inferiority. Is he right or is he mistaken? Let's see. In this picture on the right, we see on the left a big stag with these beautiful antlers, right? Very beautiful. And beside him, a small deer, very envious and very angry because he's feeling inferior before the stag. His antlers are very small, right? Very, very small and insignificant. So he's angry and he's even cursing the big stag, jerk. He's angry. And according to Alfred Adler, this small deer is feeling inferior. So according to Adler, the feeling of inferiority has origins in a feeling of helplessness children feel before an adult. So according to Adler, a child being smaller as compared to an adult, they would look at an adult and feel inferior. They would see adults powerful, big in size, knowledgeable, right, independent. The child would feel inferior. Well, if you reflect a little bit about this, you see that this is not found in reality. It's quite the opposite. Usually, children tend to admire adults. Usually, children look at adults and they admire. They have adults as an ideal. They want to be like adults. They admire their strength, their independence, their capacity, their power, right? They are protective and intelligent. So usually people admire adults. They are grateful and admire. So this vision by Adler, maybe he saw some children might feel inferior, but this is not the norm. This is not what happens to most human beings. If a sick child, if a child is psychologically sick, he can feel this, like inferior towards adults. But normally, most children, they admire and like very much these big figures of adults before them. And then continues Adler. Because of this feeling of inferiority, children tend to compensate by trying to be superior. And then if the child continues this feeling when he's an adult, in society he will be very competitive, he will try to win over other people, he will try to be better than other people to compensate this feeling of inferiority. You see it in this picture, this is obvious, right? The child imagining himself much stronger than he really is to compensate his feeling of inferiority. This happens sometimes, but this is not how normal human beings are. This can be a problem in one child or another. Let's listen here, Dr. Keppe again.
Alfred Adler, vejam a foto dele. Ele era um médico particular até do Freud. Então ele falou sobre questão do complexo de inferioridade. Veja o esquema sobre isso, que a criança se sente inferior, né? Se sente inferiorizada. Então ela procura se valorizar, sair do complexo de inferioridade. Então, após isso, ele procura na sociedade procurar se valer, né? Em quarto lugar, ele, como não era muito profundo, era um tipo cicloide, assim, mais sociável. Então ele não se aprofundou muito no estudo sobre a personalidade. Então veja lá no final, né, ele passava do estudo da inferioridade para a superioridade.
So, as Dr. Keppe has just explained, Adler, he was not very much he didn't have much knowledge about philosophy. And so he stayed in this superficial level, very superficial, believing that children would feel inferior in front of big adults, right? And this is not very much philosophical. And also, Adler himself, he was this he was what you call a picnic kind of personality, when the person is a little bit roundish. And these people, they tend to be very sociable, but very pleasant, but not very deep in thoughts. And you can see this in his theory of inferiority. So Keppe concludes like this: in my opinion, it is arrogance, megalomania, and the wish for omnipotence that explains all this kind of problem in man. I brought this painting here by painter Bianca Maria Scriulli. The title of the painting is Arrogance. She depicted this very arrogant person, because Keppe says then, behind the feeling of inferiority, surprise is the opposite, is a big feeling of superiority. This is something people don't expect, right? People are feeling very inferior, inside they feel superior. How you can understand that? Well, if a person creates a big fantasy about himself, he tries to feel superior, he's more intelligent than other people, he's more... So people feel inferior, not because they don't have values, their essence is imperfect, no, but because they create this illusion so high about themselves that when, as compared to this level, of course, he will see he's inferior to that, right? So the feeling of inferiority depends on our feeling of superiority. This is something unexpected, but if you pay attention, this is what you perceive in this kind of situation. People create an ideal about themselves. They idealize themselves. They want to see themselves in a way they are not in reality. They idealize themselves. So when they compare reality with their idealization, they feel inferior. So the basis of this feeling of inferiority, inadequacy, shyness, lack of self-confidence, it's because people feel they think themselves are very superior than other people, right? It's the opposite of people normally think. Claudia Pacheco has a wonderful explanation about this in our book called Alienating Psychotherapies. She says, this idea of feeling inferior because of parents, because of adults, puts the blame on parents. The child will believe that their father, their mother is to blame for his feeling of inferiority. This creates a paranoia. People will be always against their parents. Oh, they caused me problem. It's a big paranoia created in the family. And also, the child will feel a victim. They'll think that parents are responsible for their problems. So it's a feeling of paranoia and victimization. See what the consequence of this theory by Adler's. Then Claudia Pacheco continues her explanation. She says, you know, it's the opposite. What really happens with children have this desire for omnipotence, not inferiority. Children, many times, they want to subdue everyone to everything and put everyone under their control. You see these photos of children are not rare. Children, many times they want their will to be followed and obeyed and complied with by adults. It's very common. And then Claudia Pacheco explains, children many times, they don't tolerate being frustrated. Everything they want to be fulfilled immediately. All their wishes have to be satisfied, right? And they don't accept that fantasies are not in reality. This is very common in children. Not feeling of inferiority, is the opposite. So, and also children are usually very self-centered. They think they are the center of the universe and they want everybody else to obey them as if they were their slaves, right? They want the world to serve them immediately. There, for example, in this picture, two children disputing a toy. It's very common because the world has to live for them, around them. This is more common than the feeling of inferiority. And then children then feel they are all powerful. They have a magical thought. They believe that if they cry, everything or their wishes will be fulfilled. For example, if they cry, light will come on. If they cry, food will appear. If they cry, their mother will love them. So they try to manipulate the world by crying, by having temper tantrums, right? This is omnipotence, it's not inferiority. So, to make a long story short, many times, most of the times, children want to manipulate the world according to their own wishes, not because they feel inferior, but because they feel actually superior. So Keppe says that Adler failed to see the root cause, the real root cause of human problems, which is in megalomania, not the feeling of inferiority. Let's listen to him again.
Pois veja no esquema, Alfred Adler, ele achava que o indivíduo se tornava doente porque ele se achava muito inferior. Mas é interessante isso, que o indivíduo nunca fica doente por se achar inferior, ele fica doente por se achar superior. O Keppe, né, é um alemão, um pensador e um psiquiatra. Ele começou praticamente com a psiquiatria no século XIX, no final. O Keppe, ele foi o primeiro a dizer que a pessoa adoecia porque tinha mania de grandeza, que ele nunca encontrou na psiquiatria um doente humilde. Então esse que é o problema, né? O indivíduo não fica doente por ser humilde. Humilde, eu digo, no sentido de não de ser miserável, assim, de não ter nada para viver, mas humilde no sentido assim, de se achar inferior aos outros.
Do you see how interesting this German psychiatrist, Keppe, he was a genius because he perceived people's arrogance. And he said, this is the root cause of human problems, our arrogance, which Keppe calls theomania. And you see what Dr. Keppe has just said now, that sometimes it's good to feel inferior. It's strange, not inferior that you'll be humiliated and destroyed, not in that sense. Humility in the sense of knowing that other people may know more than you. What's the consequence of this? If you are humble, if you have this humility, you learn. For you to learn anything, you have to believe the other person has something to teach you. If you feel superior, you will not learn anything. So this feeling of superiority makes people ignorant. We need to believe that we have to learn in situations with people, right? And this requires humility. So it's good to feel inferior sometimes. Not in the pejorative way, but in an even realistic way. It's even good to feel like that. Let me change the slide here for you. So if people see their problems as a result of instincts, like Freud, as aggressive instincts or destructive impulses, you think you are a victim. And this is not useful for people. So like in this picture, the lady is just crying. She thinks she's a victim. She blames all her problems onto her companion right in front of her. This is an attitude of victimization. So Keppe concludes, if people are desperate, it's because they have placed themselves in a high position. And when they see the situation is not how they imagine, they, of course, feel inferior. And he says then, to conclude, that megalomania, the feeling of omnipotence, arrogance, is what causes our disturbances, not a feeling of inferiority. And what can we do with this? We have to conscientize the situation, to perceive this megalomania behind feelings of inadequacy, shyness, inferiority, so that we can accept our real level, being humble, and really learn with people. Then we can use our good nature. We can contribute to society, right? Give our contribution. It may not be as wonderful as we might think, but it may be a real contribution. If we think we are so superior that we cannot make any mistakes, be inferior to anyone, we'll never contribute to society. Everybody has something to contribute with, but if we feel superior, we'll block this because you think this is inferior, right? We would like this to be better, so we'll block all our contribution. Okay, just to end our talk today, I would like to compare this situation of feeling inferior in learning settings. Whenever you have to learn something, let's say you are taking up a course, you are taking up a training course, you will have to feel inferior. Because if you go to a course and you think you already know everything, or that you should know everything, you shouldn't be there. If you go to a course, it's obvious that you don't know something. That's why you go there, to learn something new. So in an educational situation, in a situation of learning, it's normal that people make mistakes, don't know very much. And this is a big block to many people when they take a course. Okay, we teach trilogy in languages here in our college, right? Keppe and Pacheco College. We teach trilogy in many areas in languages. We teach 8 languages here. In my case, English, for example. When people come to study English, we teach all these things so people, they understand why they are afraid in a learning situation, why many people are blocked at learning a foreign language. They are afraid of not pronouncing correctly, forgetting vocabulary. But what's the problem? Why they should know? Of course they don't know. So there is no problem in not knowing. So by studying all these psychological aspects in the learning process, people really overcome their difficulties and learn better and can speak a foreign language. So I would like to invite you to this new course we are having every Wednesday evening. It has started 2 weeks ago, but it's going to end in 2 weeks' time. So on the 8th of July, not tomorrow and not next week, the 3rd Wednesday from this week, the 8th of July, we are going to start a new model of sociotherapy. And the topic will be leadership and spirituality. Spirituality is a topic many people are interested at the moment because it's something that everybody, or every human being have to deal with, right? We are spirits. And this is essential for leadership. And leadership is not only if you are a manager in a multinational. Leadership, I mean having good social relationships, right? If you are a leader, you have to lead people in a good way. If you're not a leader, you have to contribute to your leader in other ways. Leadership is not for people who work in a multinational. It's present in every role we play in life, in society. So this course about leadership and spirituality, I think it's going to be very useful to you. If you're interested, please join us on the 8th of July. There on the screen, YouTube screen, you can make your registration. Thank you for your attention. I hope you join us again next week. Okay, thank you again. Bye-bye.